I told you yesterday, right? 8 o'clock. So
Yeah, that's
so
why I
this
came
is his.
in. Yeah.
So his number is 321-266-9061.
Kranti, John here. Yeah. Are you coming to class? Yeah, we are waiting for it. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Thank you. It's coming, sir.
All right, all right. Okay, it's come. Kranti, you there? He looks to be offline for a moment, so let's just wait. So guys, you understood the data services mode of replication, right? Any questions with that? Rahul, you have idea with data services. You work with data services, right?
Yes, sir. I'm currently working on data service.
Okay, okay. Alright, so today's session we will be looking at the LT replication, alright, the second mode of how we can replicate data. Alright, so these are again whenever SAP is trying to do an implementation for a particular client, usually they usually tend to start with an LT replication mode of data provisioning. Alright, so you have 4 different methods for data provisioning, and out of that, the most commonly used are the LT replication and data services mode of replication. The Sybase replication is log-based again. This is only for customers called an invite by SAP for the Sapphire. And you also have another one which is called as the direct extractor connection, which is sparingly used. Alright, so here is a little environment of how the SLT works. SLT is not a new concept for a basis guy. SLT is a small environment which is used majorly at the time of migrations between different systems. Right, so let's say you have different SAP servers and you want to move or migrate data from one client to the other. That's when you use the SLT environment. The SLT environment basically consists of another server inside it, which is called as the TDMS or Test Data Migration Server. The advantages with the SLT is it's a near or it's a real-time replication, and there is zero downtime when you're dealing with the SLT. So you don't have to bring down your source system for the SLT implementation and connectivity. You can directly go ahead and do the SLT on a different instance on the server itself. The usual method of how the solution happens on any of the SAP projects is you have a solution manager which has the documentation of how these things should be working through. And here you have some phases that usually come across any of these projects. The first thing will be a requirement gathering phase, where you try to understand or first chart out the reports that you really need at real time. All right. So I've told you previously that data that cannot wait for the next day, and only that the data that needs immediate attention and strategy change, only that data will be pushed into the HANA. So at your requirement phase, you basically analyze and see what are the basic tables and the applications that you would want to move into the SAP HANA box. So you do your requirement gathering here with your functional guys, with your business heads. So you basically understand what exactly is the requirement. Once you do that, you start off with a design phase where you will decide whether you are going for a particular kind of replication, like do you want to go for data services replication, do you want to go and use the SLT replication in case you're using any of these replications, how often should you go and replicate your data, do you want to do it at real time, or is it okay if you have a frequency of 6 hours each? Do you handle, in case you're dealing with SLT, do you want to do source CDC or target CDC for handling your delta capability? If you're using SLT, delta comes automatically. So all of these design considerations we will be working out here. Do we have a latest version of ECC? Do we have to implement the SLT on a different server like a solution manager? So all that we will be looking through at the design phase. Once we cross this design phase and understand the blueprint, if that is fine, at each of these sequences, you will have a sign-off phase where once all the check is done, you will not be going back on it unless you are using a change work order for adding anything new to it. So once you sign off, you go to our next phase in this design phase. Once you deal with all of that, then you have a build and test phase where we actually go ahead and build a flow, and we will experiment or test it with some production data. All right. All right. So we'd have the deployment section. After you do your build and test at the server for SLT, then you would actually deploy that project, and we will work around if it is operational, or in case it needs any optimization for improving the processes with the entire implementation or the design, right? And this is again a closed loop where you keep getting the requirements, and then you go and do your implementation accordingly. All right. So there are basically different servers that get involved when you're doing the implementation. And this is again not completely an SLT environment. Again, even if it is for a data services implementation, you will have a similar phase going on when you're dealing with the solution manager. All right. And so let's see what exactly is SLT. SLT stands for SAP's Landscape Transformation Server. The basic idea of that is that it should be able to pick up data from the SAP system and move it into the SAP HANA box. Alright, that's the basic idea about the SLT server. Alright, and just one quick second. Right, so once you go ahead and have a system which is actually able to do that, then we'll also be considering if that system is able to do that replication at real time. All right, so if a system has to do that, which we call here as the SLT server, SAP's Landscape Transformation Server, some of the things that you need to have when you're dealing with is the capability of the source system. If it is at what edition of the source system we're using, what edition is the SLT, and are we able to actually replicate data into the HANA server? So we'll talk about all these aspects. So on the first front in SLT, the installation aspects, you will be using the respective DMIS add-ons. Alright. To the LT replication server, you will be using DMIS 210.1.700 with Service Pack 4. That's the add-on that we will need for the LT server. Other system requirements that are mandatory will be NetWeaver 7.02 and kernel 7.20 ext. We need to apply them with the LT replication server. Usually what happens is the server that we use for ECC might not be on the latest par with the solution manager. So you will use a secondary system for LT server, like another instance from the solution manager. That's how we usually visualize that. On the second step, you have the configuration steps on the LT replication server. Basically, these configuration steps are how you go ahead and create a framework for doing your LT replication, which is a real-time replication. So we've seen those three boxes: your source box, your LT box, and then your HANA box. So all of these three should be connected with each other. So the first step is to define a schema. So what is the framework you want to call to move that data into the HANA database? So there you define a schema, and this can be handled for each source system. So that you want to connect through SLT, which gives you an idea that you can have multiple source systems connected to the SLT as well. All right, so we'll go and look at that options as well. So once you go ahead and define a schema and a framework for the source system, you will have the RFC connection between the source system and the LT server, right? So both of these are applications. So you'll go ahead and define the RFC connection between the source system and the LT server. You'll also have to define a connection between the LT server and the HANA database. Since it's a database connection, you have a DB connection defined between the LT server and the HANA database. Right, so you will have to define a DB connection into the SAP HANA system. Then you have to define the replication frequency as to how often you want to replicate your data. You have three options. One is a real-time replication. One is for a frequency. So you can say how often you want to schedule the replication to happen, like 4 times in a day. You can also mention once in a day, and the time when you want to replicate that. You also have how often you want to go ahead and replicate it in a day. All of these you can mention at the replication level. And for replication, you will also need to have background jobs for doing the data replication. So you'd go ahead and mention the background jobs for data replication as well. Right? Just a moment here. All right. So you will have a certain number of background jobs that you will have to define for data replication at the configuration step. So we'll go through that as well. And on the HANA side, set up the data replication in SAP HANA. Basically, you will have to mention the relevant source system, and you have options to start and stop the replication. So you have different versions of how the improvement has happened with the SLT side as well when you're looking at the SAP HANA system. For Service Pack 1, you only had options for starting and stopping the data replication. With Service Pack 3, you had some additional features added to it to stop replication, to resume a replication. Then with Service Pack 5, you have more features added to that. We will be discussing them in today's session. Alright, so the benefits of the LT replication server is the real-time replication that it can be done between the ECC system and the SAP HANA. Now the replication server, the latest replication server has the ability not just to move data from ECC, but also can move data from databases into the HANA database as well. So previously, we were using only replication of ECC data into the HANA database, but now you can accommodate different databases as well with the LT server. So that option also is available. Right, so first thing is you will have to mention or it gives you the ability to replicate data at real time from your transaction system into the HANA database, but you will only be specifying which data you want to really replicate at real time. You have also the ability to transform data into HANA format while replicating data in real time. Alright, you will have to transfer only Unicode data into the HANA system through the LT server, so you can do that at the replication in the replication engine itself. Alright, and it also has, it is not just direct replicating data, but it also has the capability for handling transformations as well. So it is a little difficult to handle transformations, but still you can handle transformations in the replications or the replication server. The three different kinds of transformations that you can handle: your convergence, your filtering, and additional columns. So you can handle them with depending on the include programs that you're using. So you'll see that. The additional advantage is you can use the LT server to integrate systems within different versions of your SAP system, from ECC older versions of 4.6b till the latest version of 6.0 with the latest service pack. All of these can be integrated using the LT server, so you are able to replicate data from actually any SAP system into the HANA database. The replication or the setup for setting up the replication engine, the time for setting up the replication engine is also very less if you're not including a lot of transformations. It can be done without actually bringing down the source system, and you can go ahead and set up the LT replication. The entire setup and replication can be done in almost less than a day. All right. So the setup that you have is you do the replication server in ECC. The interfacing for that replication is called as data provisioning if you handle it from from SAP HANA. All right. So this is the actual technology or the architecture inside the SLT server. Inside the SLT server, you will have another server or technology called as the TDMS or Test Data Migration Server. The Test Data Migration Server basically consists of a data transfer layer which connects both your sender data and your receiver data. All right. So you have the sender data, and you also have the repository and the dictionaries from where you are actually bringing in the tables to move it into the target system. So when you do that, again, you have different transfer layers depending on the different schemas that you're using, and you have the basic. What you do here is from the sender data, you're not bringing everything, right? So you basically have to read the data whichever you need to replicate based on the database trigger, and also with the logging tables accordingly, so that you're not bringing everything. But your basic skeleton of the architecture is to read the data, and you will be moving the data into the convert data step. And you're also bringing data, the different RFC connection between the sender dictionary, sender repository, and the read data. Here you have convert data and write data options. Now what happens is, through the TDMS system, you will have the data being replicated into the target system. Here the target system is not into the SLT server, but you're writing data directly into the HANA database, right? You're not writing data you're not staging it at the LT server. Data is not at all staged at the LT server. You're writing directly into the HANA database, all right? So this is the technology that goes inside the LT server, which is the TDMS technology. So the key building blocks that you have with the SLT server is you have the source system, which is usually we consider this to be an ECC system. the LT server, and then your SAP HANA system. So you have the actual underlying database for the SAP system, so you'll use that database. So here you have your data inside the underlying database, and your basic database trigger, you define which tables you want to go ahead and bring through, and how often should the schedule be, whether it should be a real time or it should be a time frame based or frequency based. You go ahead and mention that in there, and based on that, the trigger is hit onto the source system. So when the trigger happens, this connection actually is hitting the underlying database, which is either Oracle or SQL, whichever is the underlying database. You bring that specific data into your application tables, and from the application tables you have a couple of modules. One is the read modules, and the other one is the logging modules. The read modules reads the data from these application tables, but the logging tables will be responsible for keeping a track of what data is actually being sent out from this application table, because we're handling both full loads and delta loads, which is also called as replication loads, using the SLT server. So you have to track whether a particular set of data is already sent, or it is a new data and you should be sending that. So whenever you're doing your full load, first the entire load will go through. From whenever you're selecting the replication option, it is only the delta that is going through. So you'll have to go and check what are the which data has already been sent, and this is maintained by the logging tables. These are created automatically on once you have the LT server, and you're reading this data from the application tables. Now, once your read modules reading the data from the application table, through the RFC connection defined between the LT server and the source system, your data will be in the controller modules, which move the data to the write modules. The write modules will write the data directly to the SAP HANA application tables using the database connection between the LT server and the SAP HANA system. So the LT server basically has a framework in which you define the RFC connection between your source system, your DB connection between your target system, the number of triggers that you need here for triggering of these jobs, and then you also define the schedule as to how often this trigger should happen, and the number of background jobs that you need for actually handling the LT server. So the LT server does not have to be a separate SAP system and can run on any SAP system with SAP NetWeaver 7.0 Web App Stack. Alright, so you'll have to remember that. Now these are some of the installations and system requirements that you would need for the source system, the LT replication server, and the SAP HANA system. For the source system, which is the ECC, you need to have the respective DMIS 2010 version, and your system should be at least at a minimum support pack for being able to integrate with the LT replication server. 4.6b is the minimum. Anything above that, you would be able to integrate with the LT server. The basic configuration involves the table space for logging tables. You have the place where you can go ahead and define that as well. This is an optional setting, so even if you do not, it will anyways take that space, but it's always better to give that how much table space you're using for the logging tables. The RFC user, so between this and this system, you'll have to define the RFC connection. The RFC user with the appropriate authorization for being able to read data from the ECC system, you'll have to define that as well. And the system requirements is that this should be at least above 4.6c and higher, and you can handle with any database underlying the ECC system. Now at the installation level for the LT server, you need to have an add-on called DMIS 2010_1_700. The minimum support pack is the latest available on the LT server, so whatever is the latest, you need to have that. for replicating data. All right. So that's the add-on that you need. The basic configuration is you need to set up an RFC connection to the source system, and you need to define a database connection to the HANA system. You also have to define the maximum number of jobs that are for the replication. The system requirements include the allocation of RAM, that is between 16 to 32 GB of RAM, and the number of cores is 2 to 4 cores on the CPU. The file system is at least 100 GB file system for the logging tables. All right. So here you have the NetWeaver should be on NetWeaver 7.22 with kernel 7.20 ext. On the HANA database side, again, this is for Service Pack S02. Now we have Service Pack S05. So it includes the LT replication functionality fully integrated into the HANA Studio. Any question? Hello?
No.
Yes, sir.
I thought somebody asked a question. Is it all fine? Okay, just give me one moment. All right. So on the HANA side, you have the functionality of the SLT directly integrated into the HANA Studio. So whenever you click on the data provisioning, you will be able to look at the SLT server, or you can directly visualize the SLT replication. And on the HANA system, you have to create a DB user or DB owner so that you can use that configuration and the credentials on the LT server for connecting or creating a database connection on the LT server framework. The setup doesn't take too long, so this is the effort that you usually have. For doing your installation and internal tests, you would have an hour and a half. For configuration, half hour, and then the entire setup and running speeds, you would be doing that within less than 2 hours or 2.5 hours for setting up the LT server. In case you're adding some more validations to it, again, so this is the time frame that you have, and one of the customers for chemicals is using this, or this is the time frame that they've mentioned as how long it took to set up the LT server. Without, again, this is a table without any transformations involved. So in case you're handling transformations, it surely will take much more time because you will have to do your transformations and add-ons and changing of include programs and all that, which will take quite some time. So coming to the LT replication configuration, this is the step one. So here you have the LTR as a transaction code that you'll have to go and give in the replication server. It opens a web-based tool where you can go and define the framework for your LT server. So in the framework, you define the schema name firstly. So you have the steps as to what you should be doing there. You can create schema in the SAP landscape transformation system, connect source system to the LT system via RFC connection, your database connection with the HANA database, and specify a number of jobs for data replay. You'll also have to optionally define the logging tables. Alright, so once you go in here and click on create, it will open up a schema name. Alright, this is the framework name, and this will be pretty much the schema that you will be importing into the SAP HANA database as well. Alright, HANA underscore SLT, if you've defined that, you will be seeing that as a schema name. So once you go and create that, it will ask you for these optional or these mandatory things that you need to go and fill in. The first thing is the number of replay jobs that you have to define for replicating data from the ECC system to the HANA database using SLT. So you can define the jobs in there. You have to define an RFC connection between the ECC system and the LT server. So you define the RFC connection. The database connection also is defined here. Your user by default is usually system. Give the password and the host name and the instance number. Here you have to define the logging space. This is an optional step, but it's good to go ahead and define. Then you have different options for replication. Do you want to do it at real time, or do you want to replicate it by interval, or do you want to go and schedule by time? So let's say you have one-time replication per day. You can go and mention when you want to replicate it every day, transact that hour for replication. The schedule by interval is an option where you define how often you want that replication to happen. So let's say you give a 6-hour gap, so every 6 hours the replication will happen. Right. Now on the HANA side, you have an option called data provisioning. So you click on the data provisioning tab, and then it will open up into the LT replication, and you will have the option to search for the tables that you want to replicate. So this is the place on the HANA Studio where you'd have the data provisioning tab in the quick launch window. So once you click on the data provisioning tab, it opens up the LT server interface. It is not the same LT server that you see there, but the interface that you have in Studio is modified for understanding, and you can mention which tables you want to go ahead and replicate. So on the first, on the service pack 1 and 2, you had these options where you are able to click on load, replicate, and stop replicate. So if you click on load, that is the initial load that happens. A replication is the delta that you do every time on. Alright, so first time if you have 1,000,000 records, you would probably take a little more time, but after that you will not have so much data that you would be moving in between the systems every day. So the amount of data that is replicated is small compared to the load or the initial load. Alright, so once you go and define that in the data provisioning window, so we'll look at a couple of examples from the industry. We have used the LT server. The source systems they've used are, again, the database on that source system is the Oracle 10G. They're using the SAP R3 application 620. And the amount of uncompressed production data that they have is 3.5 TB. Okay, and on the test system, yeah, they have pretty much close to 100 GB on the test system. The replication scenario they've used is a real-time replication, and they're only replicating the transparent tables for phase 1. So the allocation, of course, is they're using, just one quick second, please. All right. So sorry about that, guys. You can hear me, right?
Yeah, we
Hello?
can hear.
Okay, cool. So so in this, the key features are the allocation of the RAM. You're using 8 cores of CPU, 24 GB of RAM, and the number of background processes that are defined at 12. The number of schemas that they've defined is only 1, and the entire setup took like 3 days. And number of jobs and processes that are assigned is 1. So again, details about the delta replication is number of tables, data volume replicated is 20 to 30 tables. All of them are Z tables. And the number of triggers that are defined for each of these tables, you have 30 triggers for 10 tables. Okay. Average delta replay is still not available. A similar case from another utility company is using the R3 Enterprise 4.7. All right, the underlying database is Oracle. The database size is 2.5 terabytes of production system data. Replication scenario is also the real-time replication, and the allocation of RAM. They're using CPUs from Xenon 8 core, and the RAM is 32 GB allocated for LT server. Background work processor 12. Number of schemas defined is only 1. All right. The number of job processes assigned is 1. Throughput is 500 GB per 1 hour. All right. That's the replication speeds that you have. You have triggers defined for 1 trigger per table. Okay. Now let's try to understand the transformation capability that you have with the LT server, which requires a little knowledge with the ABAP. But since we have this transformation capability, let's also try to go and understand how this can be done. Okay, so whenever you're doing a replication, I told you that the replication engine has to have the capability to also handle transformation at the engine level. You can definitely do the transformation inside the HANA box, but unnecessary usage of performance and issues will be there when you're doing your transformations at the HANA level. So you usually handle the transformation at the engine level, and transform data, cleansed data will only be moved into the SAP HANA database. So a replication engine has to have the capability to do replication real time or near real time, and also handle transformations before it moves the data into the HANA system. Alright, so here are some of the transformation capabilities that you have with the LT server. First thing is, in case you want to go and handle some conversion of data. So so you have different scenarios to make certain fields anonymous, to fill initial fields, and to convert units of currency and calculate amounts and values. You would use the first method of transformation, where you will have the include programs. There is a table that you maintain that is called as IUUC assignment rule map. Okay, so that table, you define all the transformations that you want to handle into that table. All right, and once you define your transformation into this table using the include program, you will go ahead and use that for replicating data into the SAP HANA Studio. Now, whenever you're doing your, I hope all of you understand what are include programs. You have different program types that you can go ahead and create. These are like smaller bits of tables that are like system tables, which we can use in a program, which we can call. So they're like function modules, but actually they're calling other codes which are used as includes. Right? They can be only used in a program, which are include programs. So when you go ahead and transform your data using these, what happens is, from the source system, you don't have the entire data transferred one shot or transformed one shot into your target system. What you define a particular portion as to how that transformation happens. All right. So let's say you have a huge set of data, and you can divide that data into different subsets based on, let's say, a company code. So what you define is, you define data portions which say the processing will happen from US01 to US26, all right, portion by portion. So US01, first all of those records get transformed, and it goes through a loop in the LT server where each portion of that selection criteria will get transformed and will be sent to the data target also into different data portions. So all the data that has US01 company code, those will be first processed, then US02. Similarly, even when they're sending back to the database, HANA database system, that is how the data will move back into the SAP HANA database system as well, right? So portion by portion, one portion to the next portion will be how the looping will happen on the LT server. So it does not take all the data one shot, so that it avoids congestion. Right? So here are some of the implementation steps that you will have to do on the include programs and the tables that you use for transformations. So includes containing the usage of naming convention for parameter and table fields to change data to be replicated. So here you have basically two methods of implementing whenever you're dealing with these include programs. One is an event-based rules and the other one is a parameter-based rules. You can only use either one of them. If you're using an event-based rules, then you will not use a parameter-based rules, and if you're using a parameter-based rules, you will not use an event-based. The event-based rules gives you more features for handling data at different levels before you modify the data. So it's more flexible than the parameter-based rules. And so you'll have to understand the LT server and how the data is processed before we go ahead and start coding with the event-based rules. We'll list out some of the events that are available. And the parameter-based rules is less flexible, but it is easier to create using the parameter-based rules. So you define the parameters and you assign the values for each of these parameters. So you can go ahead and define that. Let's look at a couple of examples here. So if you're looking at the table IUC assignment rule map, so you have these columns MTID, the table name, the basis version, event, and a field name, parameter, and the include program. So if you're using the event based, then you will not touch anything relating to parameter here. If you're using the parameter based method of implementing, you will not touch the event based, only one of them. Alright, so you have different ways of how you can create these programs, or you can create programs in SC38, but you have different definitions for each of them. Executable programs, you have include programs, and so event-based rules and parameter-based rules. So let's say at the event-based rules, basically you have all of these different events that are available. The begin of processing, end of processing, begin of block, begin of loop, end of loop. These are the events that you'll have to define, and at each of these you can define a loop, how that can be processed. Right on to the left, if you see a framework of how the program is defined, start, load, replication, begin of processing, and you're defining a loop here. So loop through the portion from the source system, and begin of block. So again, loop at a source, then the begin of loop, you have to move corresponding data into the target system, and then for each record that needs to be transferred, you need to tell the individual rule for them, and then end of record, end of loop, and then finally you define the end of loop, and then you have to write it to the target. So it is again portion by portion, row by row is how your transformation happens here. Again, it is quick, but you have to define the rules for transforming your data. You have to have a good idea about include programs and ABAP coding when you have to do the event-based rules. In your parameter-based rules, what you do is you will still use the same table. Again, you have to define the parameters and you have to mention what these parameters actually mean. So if you have a parameter base, so let's say you have 3 parameters defined, you have to tell what each parameter is mapped to. So if you have defined a literal, the technical name will be I_P1 and all that. So you have to define the field name for each of these parameters that you want to use, and based on that, you can go ahead and implement the parameter-based rules. So if you're looking at how to create this, you can go into SC38, that is the ABAP editor. Once you go ahead and define the ABAP, go into the ABAP editor, you would have the program name, ZIUC, named by event, so that include program. We create it as an include program and save. So here, if you look at it, you're basically trying to look for a name. So based on the name, you begin off records. So you're looking for a record, and if your name is of that particular record, you're trying to filter that out. So you could use that on this is again event based, right? So this is event based, where you tell the include that this is an event based, okay, and what you want to do at this level, begin of records or begin of block. So this is where you want to go ahead and mention this event to be handled. All right, the transformation happens at this level. If you're looking at the parameter level, and you mention the parameter where you want to actually do, and here you have mentioned the name of e underscore name, that is the parameter that you would want to use. And if it is dummy, then you have to go ahead and change it there. In case you want to add a few extra columns to the table that you're transforming, or I think that's when you would use the replication table stage. Again, this is on the target. If you want to define tables of target structure and you want to add some extra fields before you are adding it to the target table, that is when you will go ahead and define this particular table, IUUC replication table stage. But again, your transformations are stored in our original table, IUUC assignment rule map, which is also an include. So once you go ahead and define that, you can replicate the data into the HANA Studio. So here is how you can go ahead and do this. First thing, you'll have to add whichever is the field to the table. All right. So let's say on your target table, you want to add an extra column which has a conversion from into US dollars from, let's say, a particular currency. So let's say you want to have it in euro from a particular currency. So you have to add that first, the field to the structure, and once you go ahead and define that, so you should find a way to actually populate that particular column into your target table. So here you have again two programs, again replication, the event based or the parameter based. So you choose which one you want to use. So in case you're using an event based, then you go and define it at that particular event, begin of block. So you mention that loop where it has to go. So if your particular currency value is USD, all right, then you define your condition saying that you want to multiply it by 1.5 times as a basic step, and you want to populate that into the column which says currency in euros. All right, so it is only for if your currency is USD. So that's what you define at the event level. So once you do that, the next thing is, again, another method of handling that is through the parameter, where you mention the parameter 1 as currency and the parameter 2 as amount. So what you do here is you mention the currency if it is the USD, what you see there, then your amount should be a multiplication factor by 1.5 if it is only USD. All right, so it's a direct approach, and then once you go ahead and do that, then that is for the include program that you're using at this level. Now at your HANA system, this is how your output will be. Hello,
Yeah, Emmanuel, there is some disturbance. I
can
can't
you hear me?
Oh, there is some disturbance actually.
Okay, but just give me one quick second here. Yes, can you hear me? Hello?
There is some disturbance in manual.
Is it the sound that is coming through, or?
Yeah, now it's clear. Yeah, now it's good.
All right. I think the inverter is down. In case the power goes off, we'll be back in another 5 minutes. All right. So 9 o'clock is when the power comes back.
Yeah, 2 minutes. I think.
But if you can hear me, we can go ahead and continue. So basically, what we have at the target level is the amount in euros that is populated through these transformations that we had in the LT server through the include programs. All right. So whenever it finds the USD, it's going to do a into 1.5. So if you have 100, you find it as 1.5 in the amounts. If it is 200, you get 300, 1.5, 100, 150. If it is a euro, it does not do any transformation. It brings the value as it is into your target field. All right. So some of these things can be handled. Okay. All right. So you also have an option to go ahead and filter your data. You can hear me, right?
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right. So you can also handle the filtering capability with the LT server, where you can, in case you need to filter out a few records, you can do that as well. That also is another transformation that you can do with the LT server. So here only data of specific, again, here should be used in HANA, for instance. So this is where you can go ahead and do it. Let me show you. So a basic filter is defined in the IUC SPC underscore procopt. This is the trigger table. So here you'd go ahead and mention basically what data you want to bring in. So in case you want to bring in filter data. So hello, can you hear me, guys?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, just 1 second. Net పనిచేస్తుంది. Huh? All right, so తీసావా ఇదేం డైరెక్టా పవర్ వస్తుందా? Just one more time, guys. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
All right, cool. Thank you. The power also has come back, so it's another problem. All right, so in case you are looking at when this is the table, again, your transformations are defined at the IUC assignment rule map table itself, and your include program is what you're adding to it. So in the include program, you're mentioning that in case if it is the AS4 local is not equal to n, then you would be skipping the record, all right? So that you're mentioning at the beginning of the block, which is the loop statement that you'd use. Okay, so you can go ahead and filter records as well in case you want to handle filtering from the SLT at the transformation level. So you can do your conversion, you can do your adding of filters, and also your basic filtering capability also is available. Now with Service Pack 3, we had a couple of additional features that were added where you are able to suspend a particular replication. So in case you are handling or you're replicating your entire job and you want to go ahead and suspend a replication from happening, you can click on the suspend button and then resume it whenever you want it. All right. So this option was available when we were handling the this is a new add-on that came with the Service Pack 3. Now, with Service Pack 3 also came in the additional feature of adding databases as well to the SAP the LT server. Previously, it was only handling the ECC replication, but with the Service Pack 3, the additional feature of being able to replicate data for databases also was introduced. All right, so you have a couple of these tables which define the structure of or the metadata of the data, the definitions of these non-SAP sources into the HANA system, and the LT server. You have DD02L and DD02T. These are the table definitions. So basically, if you have the database on the source side, now previously we were doing an RFC connection because both of them were applications. But if you're using a database on the source side, then you will have the same DB connection on the source side as well between the database that you're using and the LT server, and you'll also have the DB connection on the target side for your HANA database. Right. So if you look at the actual interface, this is how it will be. Now we're also on the latest version. We're on Service Pack 5. So if you click on this, you have option for the SAP, where you define the schema or the RFC credentials, and if you're going to the legacy, you define the database, okay, which database you're using, and also you create the DB connection and all that. Now let's go and take a look. Again, these are the supported for the replication here with for SAP, everything is yes, and for LT server, the IBM DB2 and the Informix are not supported. Right, let's go and look at the SAP HANA server.
Emmanuel, can you send these slides if possible?
I sure will send all of these.
Okay, thanks.
I'll send you the entire deck of even the certification material.
Okay.
So that you guys can start preparing as well as we go through sessions.
Yeah, thanks.
We'll give the fees also, certification fees.
Sir?
Examination fees also, you'll send it.
I wish I'm that rich, John. Alright, this is the HANA Studio, which is the interface that we'll be working from, and data provisioning is where we'll actually click to get into the LT server. So here is the place where you can mention if you want to go ahead and execute a particular replication, for you want to load a particular table or you want to replicate a particular table. So first time, if you want to go ahead and add a particular table to be replicated into the system, so you will have to go ahead and mention that table here. So let's say you have one of these tables called, so you have this interface. Once you click on load, so you go ahead and type in a table name. Let's say CE3 idea. Alright, so let's say CE3 idea is one of the COPA tables, which has, this is again a summarization table with the operating concern name idea. This is the CE3, so you just want to go and search for that table. So you have CE3 idea, alright. So you can go ahead and add that into the target schema. And the schema, okay, just let me come back here. So you see this here, target schema is configured ECC data. So this is the target schema and it is bringing from the source system ECC. Alright, so you can go ahead and click on the target schema is available here. If you see here, you have ECC data. Yeah, so this has a list of tables that you've actually replicated into the HANA system. If you see here, CE1, CE2 tables have been replicated. You don't have any CE3 table. And let's see if we can go ahead and replicate that table here. Click on the load. We have CE3 idea. So you select that and add it to the target schema. So once you add it to this target schema, you can click on finish. So you see this here, it is scheduled, CE3 idea. The first time load takes a little bit, so now it is changed to in process of moving data from CE3 idea. And the first time load you have huge amount of data, so it will take a little while for the initial load, but from then on you will have the replicate. So once you go ahead and load, this is basically the first time load that is happening, and also it depends on the number of background jobs that have been defined for this particular thing and the ones that are available. So we have right now added the CE3 idea for the actual initial load process. Okay, so CE3 idea has been executed. So if you go into the ECC data, you'll see this. It'll replicate it along with the data. So if you open the data preview, you would find the structure and the data also replicated right now at real time. Okay. So you can go into the ECC system if you want to. So let's go into the source and see. If you go into the SAP logon, onto this server, which is the EH5, SAP EHP5. So let's go into that server, EHP5. So once you log into the system, your transaction code for it is LTR. So once you go and type in LTR, it's a web-based tool. Your SLT admin is the username and password. So here is where we define the framework. So if you go into the ECC data and click on it, you would have the entire set of information about the different tables that are involved in here. So we just did a replication for CE3 idea. So you will even find the replication details, statistics. So if you want to click on this, it will tell you also the number of tables and fields that have been actually replicated between the system. Okay, how often it is. So this is an additional feature that has been given recently with Service Pack 5 to monitor the data that is being replicated and all that. All right. You look at the basic settings as to how the framework is built. You have the configuration name as ECC data. Your RFC destination is ECC data. If you see here, it is an SAP system, so I select this. If it is a non-SAP, and you get the option to select the databases. Right, so you are reading from single client. Yes, you select that. So you have the opportunity to read from multiple clients as well. So here is where you define the RFC destination from your source to the LT server. On the other side, your database connection to the HANA database is done here, where you give the credentials for the HANA database, the host name, and the instance number. The amount of table space for the logging tables is optional, is not mandatory. And how often you want to go ahead and replicate the data you mentioned here at real time. All right. So your triggers are defined here for these tables that are defined here. All right. Okay, but and your joins, jobs, and how many underlying. This is the instance number. The number of transfer jobs defined are 1. The available number of things are 5. So you can go ahead and select the master job and change this action from action to stop and restart if you want to. So these options also can be done. All right, so let's go back. So here, in case you want to create a new schema, you can click on this. You'll have to define these configuration name, the number of data transfer jobs that you want to use. In case you're using a non-SAP system, you'll go ahead and select the non-SAP source. When you select that, your database systems that you want to use, you have the option to select from these. Okay, MaxDB, DB2, DB6, MS SQL, Oracle, and Sybase. These are the systems that you could use to go ahead and replicate data from the database level. All right. Your real-time scheduling, if you want to, it is by default selected to real-time. In case you want to schedule it by an interval, you could go ahead and say how many hours, how many days, how many minutes. You can mention that as well. You can schedule it by time if you want to. So this is the generic thing how you go ahead and configure the LTR. So once you go ahead and do that, that particular schema that you define here, which is ECC data, so that will be available. The interface you will have will be available at so that will be available at the data provisioning level. Okay. So here you want to go ahead and replicate this. So now once you go ahead and you brought in CE3 idea, right? So now let's say I want to go and search for CE3 idea again in the load. So I go CE3 idea. So if I want to go ahead and search for this table, I will not be actually be able to replicate. All right. So what I do is, because that's a full load, now what I do is I'll have to go ahead and select this, and I have to go ahead and replicate. All right. So you have thing for replication and for loading, right? The replicate is basically the delta that you want to bring in. So you just want to bring in. So here you can control the replication process directly from the SAP HANA Studio itself. All right. If you want to, again, apart from that, you can mention the trigger directly at the LT server. You can also do the trigger from here as well. So both of these you can go ahead and do. Alright, so let's look at some of the features from Service Pack 5. All right. So basic replication engine, so we understand this. We have a trigger-based replication. We call this as a trigger-based replication as well, or SLT. So the basic understanding is that you have a replication engine inside the LT server, which is writing to the application tables into the HANA database. And you also have the option from the HANA Studio to control your replication from there as well. All right. Again, it can be used with any of the older versions of SAP, and it is bundled with the license model from SAP HANA software itself. All right, so some of the benefits that you have is this real-time replication is one. You are able to migrate into HANA format at real time. Again, when I say HANA format, it is a conversion of it into a Unicode conversion during load. Replication can be handled. It doesn't take too long to set the LT server up, and provides both handling of cluster and pool tables as well, and is fully integrated with SAP HANA Studio. Some of the things, and added to that, now the LT server has the capability to replicate data from non-SAP sources as well. The concept is basically you have the read modules and the application tables. From there, your logging tables, you would have a database trigger based on whether you want to trigger it off at real time or from time to time or once in a day. You mention the trigger, and you'd be triggering the data from the underlying database to the application tables, and the read modules will be bringing that data through logging tables. Will keep a track of the change log, and that will be sent to the LT server. In case there is any transformation, through that you will be writing data into the database connection directly. All right. Now, in case you're using a non-SAP source, you will have the read modules previously here in the LT, in the source system itself. Now your read modules are actually in the LT replication server when you're dealing with a database connection. You define a DB connection both from the source to the SAP LT server, and you also have a DB connection from the LT server to the HANA database, right? So if you look at it, the LT replication server transfers all metadata table definitions from the non-SAP source system to the HANA system. So you have, previously I showed you a table name which is DL002T and all that, right? So these will hold the definitions of the metadata which it will transfer from the non-SAP source system into the HANA system, all right? The HANA Studio perspective, non-SAP source application works as per SAP sources. When a table replication is started, LT replication server creates logging tables within the source system. So this LT server, once you define the connection here, it will create the logging tables, but the read modules are actually done inside the LT server. As a difference, the read modules are created in the LT server. The connection, the non-SAP source, is established as a database connection. So you have different options as to how you can connect it with the LT server. Your basic LT server, you had one SAP system connecting to one HANA system, alright, but you can go ahead and you had one schema you could define, but now you have multiple source systems, meaning so you can have two SAP source systems actually through one LT server writing data to one HANA box, but two different schemas inside the HANA system. You also have the capability to actually have one LT server support two SAP HANA to write data to two SAP HANA systems, and at two different schemas as well. System 1 is writing to schema 1 and system 2 is writing to schema 2, but you're using only one LT server in between. So that possibility is also available when you're dealing with the SAP HANA, when you're dealing with the LT server. You also have the ability to bring data from two different SAP systems and bring that data into one HANA schema using the LT replication server. That can also be handled. Source systems are connected to the same HANA system are also the same schema. So you also have a feature where you can write data from one SAP system to two different HANA schemas and HANA systems as well. So all of these are available. So if you look at the option here, you will have the option to go and select from read from a single client. So either you can select that or you can allow multiple mappings as well. So you can select multiple usage and you can define that as well. Right? So with the latest Service Pack 5, you also have a monitoring dashboard where you can go and click on it. You will be able to see the tables that are replicated and all that information. Previously, we did not have that. Again, this is what we've seen just now. The basic information that you'll have to put in into these the credentials that you'll have to go and feed it with so that you can handle the LT. So here you have, if you look at this, allow multiple usage, flag to allow usage of source systems in different configurations. So one-to-end replication you can do. The second option is read from single client. Flag for client-specific load and replication. The data is only read from the client, which is specific in the RFC connection. Alright. So if you want to bring it from one system, you mention this, read from single client. So whatever is the RFC connection you define, for that only system it will bring the data. Alright. So here you have the table space which says data class. You have dedicated table space can be defined for the logging tables. If more than one table space was already defined, they will still be displayed. Alright, so now you have this monitoring dashboard as well, where you can specifically look at the documentation. So that option is also available. Previously we saw this, right? Jobs and connections, where you have the actions. So the master job can be stopped if we want to and can be restarted. The number of underlying, so you can have, depending on the number of work processes that are available. So once you log in to the ECC system, you can go and check how many work processes are available. And so if you go in, I hope all of you know how to look at the number of work process and background process that are available. So you go in here. So SM50, go ahead and type that transaction code. You will have the number of process overview. So here you have the background process defined 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These 5 processes that can be used. And if you see here, there is a hold on the RFC connection by the SLT admin user, okay, which is nothing but using the background job. All right, so you define the number of background jobs that you can use from the system as well on that. All right, so you have defined 2 jobs if you have, or 1 job, so that will use that background process. So you have the available will be 5, your defined will be 1. Okay. So you can restart, the master job can be stopped and restarted for the relevant configuration. So that can be done. You have this extra feature of the monitoring dashboard, which will tell you all that you have done, the number of tables and the data that you have replicated across. So you can take a look at that as well. So you have these extra, with Service Pack 3 onwards, you have 5 buttons, not 3, where you are able to go ahead and use the load option. You are able to use the replicate option. Apart from that, you have stop replication to finish a particular replication. You have also a button for suspending or pause the replication, and again to resume the replication from wherever you stopped off. So all of these options are available when you are dealing with the Service Pack 3 onwards. we've seen the table setting and transformation capabilities. So this we've seen. So you have the option to even, so let's say when you're using SLT and you're connecting to your source system, and somehow you need to pick up data that has already been archived in your source system, you can go ahead and pick up data from the archive folder as well. If you have the ADK archive in your source system, you can go ahead and bring that information. You will have an extra, if you're connecting it to the archive system, then you will have some extra interface where you can mention the time and the slot from where you want to bring that archive data from. So here, so you can create this, and from an FI document, your the size in KB that you want to bring in is again the archive date is from data from 2010 to 2011. You want to bring that data, so you can even bring that data from the archive, and also you can mention which table data you want to bring from the archive folder. So this option also has been added if you want to bring data from an archive folder directly from the source system. All right. So these are some of the new things that you have with the LT server. Can be controlled from again mobile applications as well. Again, that is a new add-on features that you have that you can do from mobile integration. All right. So these are some of the activities that we can go ahead and handle with the Service Pack 5. You have a lot of other features. So previously, if you have to compare, previously we were using DMIS 10 for the LT add-on. Now we're using DMIS 2011 as an add-on. Same thing on the source system as well. You can use 2011 or 2011 10. Again, you have minimum service pack level for SP5 that also has to be added. So at the bottom you find the customers who run other DMIS based application can only can apply for in the source and SLT server. All right. So these are some of the changes that have happened in Service Pack 5. Okay, if you go into the intricate details of understanding, again, you will not be doing all this, but you need to understand this. You will surely not be handling the LT part of it, but the basis guy will be dealing with it. But you need to understand how your interface will be only the data provisioning on your studio, but you need to understand how exactly the replication process and movement of data, your conversions, where do you have the options to go and handle transformations. You need to have a knowledge with that. All right. So again, depends on what sizing you want to use for the LT server, what RAM capacity, how many cores you want to assign. So all of that you can define based on the amount of production or non-compressed production data that you have. You can go ahead and use that for defining the sizing of the LT server as well. So these options are also given. So if you're using a small server, you use core between 2 to 4 cores, and memory you would be allocating is 16 to 32 GB. So you'd use one configuration with 2 data jobs. The source with approximately 1 to 50 tables. Table size category is between small and medium. So for every background job, you always have to dialog. So automatically you have reserved 2 background jobs and 2 permanent dialog process as well. So on the HANA CPU, you're using 1 CPU core. All right. So, right, again, these are all configuration settings for small, medium, large size, and so you can actually take a look at this. I'll be sending you this presentation so that you have a reference. All right. So again, you have also more material on the non-SAP side as well, how you can go ahead and use databases. You regularly do not use that in the industry for replicating non-SAP, but of recent past, since they want real-time replication with databases as well, so you're replicating data from databases also through the SLT server. So that's the new features, some of the new features that you have with SLT from the Service Pack 5. Right? Any questions that you guys have? Okay.
No.
So after, all right. So is there a possibility that Rahul and Kranti, can you give me a call once the session is done?
Yeah, I will. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So we'll be looking at the other features in tomorrow's session, trying to understand the studio. Okay. So we'll also look at the other two replication methods of direct extractor connection and Sybase replication. We'll not be able to see that practically, but we'll try to understand theoretically what exactly we're trying to do in there. Right? All right, guys. Have a nice evening. If you can share this
If
recording with
someone record
Nagaraj.
today's session, please give me that.
Which one?
I also need. I forgot to record, sir.
You forgot to record. All right.
Yeah.
So if Rahul or Kranti, if you've done the recording, once it converts it into the WAV format, can you upload that to, or can you give that to Nagaraj as well, and to
Yeah. Yeah.
And they for me also.
Yeah. Yeah. No problem.
Okay, thanks.
All right, guys. Have a nice evening. Guys, can Rahul and Kranti give me a call, please?
Yeah. No problem.
Thank you. Bye.